Picture this. You're in Mumbai at 6 a.m. You need to be in Ahmedabad for a 9 a.m. meeting. That's 320 miles away. In a car, you're looking at 7 to 8 hours of grinding through traffic. By conventional train, 5 to 6 hours if everything goes perfectly. By plane, maybe 2 hours total with security and transfers, plus the cost of a small fortune. Now imagine doing it in 2 hours and 8 minutes, door to door, no airport hassles, no highway traffic, just smooth, silent speed at 200 miles per hour. By late 2026, India targets initial high-speed sections between Surat and Vadodara, full Mumbai-Ahmedabad operations followed by 2028 to 2030, potentially with ceremonial Independence Day runs in 2027. And the world is watching to see if they can pull it off. Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw stood in front of cameras and laid out the roadmap. Surat-Vadodara sections, operational by December 2026. Test stretches around Surat, connecting the diamond hub to nearby cities like Bilimora, will validate the Shinkansen technology before the full 508-kilometer corridor rolls out by 2028 to 2030. The phased approach tells you everything about how seriously India is taking this. They are not promising the entire Mumbai-Ahmedabad corridor on day one. They're building section by section, testing relentlessly, and making sure every piece works before moving to the next. And the potential Independence Day connection? That's pure political theatre and brilliant strategy. If test runs or partial operations happen around the 15th of August 2027, India gets to mark its 80th anniversary of independence with bullet trains. The symbolism alone is worth billions in public perception. But here's what makes this timeline different from the 1,000 other infrastructure promises made by governments around the world. The construction is actually happening. As of January 2026, 94% of the required land has been acquired, 92% of the elevated viaduct, 320 kilometers of concrete bridge carrying tracks above ground, is complete. The 21-kilometer Thane Creek Tunnel is 95% bored through. These are not vague promises. They're developments you can confirm with satellite imagery. Think about it like this. You don't learn to drive on the highway. You start in an empty parking lot. India is doing the same thing with technology that travels at 200 miles per hour. They're giving themselves room to test, adjust, and learn in controlled sections before they put millions of passengers on the line at full scale. The phased approach has a clear purpose: getting it right. Safety checks, crew training, systems testing, everything necessary to ensure that at these speeds, every component performs flawlessly. This is the unglamorous work that prevents metal from flying off the tracks where even a single error could be catastrophic. And here's something most people don't realize. India's existing railway network is one of the largest in the world, over 68,000 kilometers of track. It carries 8 billion passengers annually, but it was built over 170 years, with technology from the British colonial era mixed with upgrades from 6 different decades. The system is a patchwork. The bullet train is different. It's a blank canvas, every millimeter designed for one purpose: speed with absolute safety. Here's where the story takes a turn. India made a deliberate choice. Instead of chasing the cheapest offer or trying to engineer everything from scratch, they partnered with the country that created the modern bullet train, Japan. The Shinkansen changed the world in 1964. When Japan launched the first high-speed line between Tokyo and Osaka, critics called it dangerous, unrealistic, and financially reckless. 60 years later, it has carried more than 10 billion passengers. Passenger deaths from crashes or derailments? Zero. Not almost none. Zero. That is the technology India is adopting, but they are buying far more than trains. They are buying decades of operational discipline, safety culture, and engineering refinement that no textbook can replicate. Japan offered India a $17 billion package, with roughly $12 billion of it as a loan at 0.1% interest over 50 years. 0.1%, spread across half a century. This is not just a sale. It is a strategic partnership and a long-term bet on India's growth. And here is what makes the project uniquely challenging. India is not Japan. Japan is a narrow island chain with stable geology. India sits on an active tectonic boundary that continues to push the Himalayas higher every year. Japan has predictable seasons. India has monsoons that drop more rain in a few months than many nations see in a year. Japan has a safety culture refined over generations. India is building that culture while simultaneously building the system. The N700S trains India ordered 28 sets must be adapted for conditions the original Shinkansen never faced. Earthquake resilience, flood resistance, extreme heat, passenger volumes far exceed what Japanese stations handle daily. The N700S itself is an engineering showcase: a lighter body, energy-efficient systems, aerodynamic nose cones that reduce drag, active suspension, predictive braking, and real-time track monitoring that detects millimeter-level shifts. India gets all of that technology, but the real value is Japan's operational mindset. The Shinkansen runs with delays measured in seconds per year. Seconds. That standard is what India must learn and internalize. Technology builds speed, but discipline builds reliability. $17 billion. To put that into perspective, it exceeds the GDP of about 50 countries. It could build 400 standard hospitals, 70 international airports, or cover a full year's salary for roughly 3 million Indian workers. And it funds one rail line 508 kilometers long. Critics ask sharp questions. Why commit this much money to a corridor serving 2 major cities when millions still lack reliable electricity? Why pay a premium for Japanese technology when cheaper options exist? Why pursue high-speed rail when existing trains and highways require major upgrades? These are fair questions, but they miss the larger picture. Think back to the interstate highways built in the United States in the 1950s. The price tag was enormous, but the impact reshaped the nation. Entire economic regions emerged. Struggling towns gained access to national markets. Businesses that lacked reach suddenly became competitive. The multiplier effect was transformative. India is applying the same principle. The Mumbai-Ahmedabad corridor links far more than 2 cities. It anchors the economic spine of Gujarat and Maharashtra, which together produce around 20% of India's GDP. Manufacturing hubs, ports, financial districts, tech parks, and universities sit along this route. Cut travel time by 60% and the region changes. Business trips become same-day events. Professionals gain the flexibility to live in one city and work in another. Students unlock access to universities they once ignored because of distance. Medical specialists can serve multiple hospitals in a single day. The project costs $17 billion, but the value it unlocks over the next 30 years runs into the hundreds of billions. Another way to understand it, roughly 30,000 people travel between Mumbai and Ahmedabad daily. The cost of those trips isn't just tickets, it's lost hours, lost productivity, and lost opportunities. A knowledge worker earning $50,000 loses about $300 in productivity for every full day spent traveling. Scaled across millions of annual trips, reducing travel time from 5 hours to 2 shapes the economy far more than any single ticket price ever could. Real estate markets see it already. Land values along the corridor have risen 30 to 40% since construction began. Investors expect cities like Vadodara and Surat to emerge as powerful satellite business hubs, much like Japanese cities that reshaped themselves once the Shinkansen connected them. Okay, let's break down what it actually takes to build this system. High-speed rail demands precision at a level regular railways never require. Track alignment tolerances are measured in millimeters. The Mumbai-Ahmedabad line crosses 20 rivers, each requiring bridges built to handle trains weighing hundreds of tons moving at 200 miles per hour. A standard bridge would fail under those vibrations in months. Land acquisition adds another layer of complexity. India needed roughly 1,400 hectares, about 3,500 acres across 2 states, and thousands of individual owners. This happens inside a democracy with property rights and courts that enforce them. As of January 2026, 94% of the land is secured, 1,319 out of 1,400 hectares. The remaining parcels are tied to environmental zones, long-held farmland, community relocations, and court cases that move slowly. To minimize land use and avoid risky crossings, engineers built 320 kilometers of elevated viaducts, about 92% of the entire corridor. Picture a concrete bridge stretching for nearly 200 miles, with each pillar positioned to withstand earthquakes, floods, and high-speed vibration. The corridor uses ballastless tracks. Traditional rails sit on gravel beds that allow slight movement. High-speed trains require rigid precision, so the rails are embedded into reinforced concrete slabs with tolerances measured in fractions of a millimeter. A 5-millimeter deviation across 1 kilometer creates vibration risks at 200 miles per hour. The 21-kilometer tunnel under Thane Creek is nearly complete. About 95% of the boring work is finished. This tunnel cuts beneath a tidal estuary with shifting sediments and saltwater corrosion challenges. The custom tunnel boring machines used here cost about $15 million each. Electrification and signaling remain the biggest tasks. As of early 2026, they sit at about 60% completion. These systems deliver 25,000 volts to the trains and manage every movement along the line. The corridor uses European Train Control System Level 2, one of the world's most advanced rail safety systems, enabling trains to operate at full speed with separation measured in seconds rather than minutes. Trial runs are expected around mid-2027, and commercial operations are projected for 2028. Japanese engineers oversee the technology, but the construction workforce is overwhelmingly Indian. Thousands of workers trained for 2 years to master high-precision concrete, pouring, catenary installation calibrated to gram-level tension, and welding techniques designed for the extreme forces of high-speed rail. Indian universities like IIT Bombay and IIT Delhi are validating every step. They're building domestic expertise by testing materials under monsoon stress, evaluating track performance in extreme heat, and analyzing train aerodynamics for long-term reliability. Infrastructure in India is always political. Prime Minister Modi has tied a major part of his legacy to this project. He announced it during a 2015 visit to Japan and has referenced it in nearly every major Independence Day speech since. For him, the bullet train symbolizes a faster, more disciplined, world-class India. Opposition parties attack from every angle. Rahul Gandhi called it a bullet train to nowhere. Leaders from states outside the corridor frame it as favoritism toward Gujarat. Critics highlight delays and safety issues on regular trains and question why billions flow into high-speed rail. The optics are brutal. Whenever a derailment happens, the next day's headlines question investing in bullet trains, while the existing network struggles. Here's the part rarely acknowledged. Upgrading a 170-year-old rail system requires a completely different playbook than building a modern high-speed line. The legacy network was built under different standards, governments, and technologies. Modernizing it is like renovating a house while the entire family continues living in every room. The bullet train, meanwhile, is a clean slate. New tracks, new technology, new operational culture. It runs parallel to the old system rather than draining resources from it. And then there's the political countdown to 2027. If trial runs look smooth, even on limited sections, the government gets a powerful Independence Day moment. Visible proof that India can deliver world-class megaprojects. If construction slips or issues appear, it becomes a gift to the opposition. State cooperation adds another layer. This corridor crosses multiple states with different ruling parties and competing interests. Aligning Maharashtra and Gujarat on land acquisition, station locations, and maintenance facilities required negotiations as complex as international diplomacy. The stakes are higher than ever. Let's talk about who's watching this very carefully. China. China has built 26,000 miles of high-speed rail in less than 15 years. They've done it faster and cheaper than anyone thought possible. They've also had accidents, criticism over debt, and questions about whether routes were chosen for economic sense or political convenience. But the scale is undeniable. India and China are in constant, unspoken competition. When China builds something massive, India feels pressure to match it. When India announces something ambitious, China watches to see if they can actually deliver. China offered to build India's high-speed rail cheaper and faster than Japan. India said no, partly because of political tensions along the border, partly because Japanese financing was more attractive, partly because Japan's safety record is spotless while China's has question marks. But there's another layer. India knows that if they pull this off with Japanese help, they become a model for other countries considering high-speed rail. Vietnam is watching. Thailand is watching. Indonesia went with China and has faced delays and cost overruns on the Jakarta-Bandung line. If India delivers on schedule with Japanese technology, it becomes a proof of concept for an alternative to China's Belt and Road approach. The geopolitical stakes are huge. Japan wants to prove its infrastructure model can compete with China's speed and cost. India wants to prove democracies can deliver megaprojects without authoritarian efficiency. Smaller Asian nations want to see if there's a viable alternative to Chinese loans and construction. This goes far beyond trains. It's a battle over which development model will shape Asia for the next 30 years. China's approach: build fast, negotiate details later, accept some inefficiencies in exchange for speed and scale. Japan's approach: engineer perfectly, test exhaustively, prioritize safety over speed of delivery. India is testing whether the Japanese model works in a country with China's complexity and scale. The answer matters far beyond India's borders. Why start with the Surat region? Phase 1, Surat to Bilimora to Vapi, creates a 160-kilometer test corridor that combines high passenger demand with heavy industry. Surat handles about 90% of the world's diamond cutting and is a major textile hub. Bilimora and Vapi link key industrial zones. This stretch gives operators everything needed to validate real-world performance: acceleration and braking at operational speeds, station flow and passenger handling, signaling and communication under load, emergency response drills, daily maintenance routines, electrification, integration, performance during monsoons and extreme heat. It forms a controlled environment where issues can be identified and fixed before the full corridor opens to millions of riders. Next comes Phase 2, connecting Mumbai to Surat on one end and Vadodara to Ahmedabad on the other. Each section is tested independently, building operational confidence and crew expertise. Trial runs are expected around mid-2027, using Japan's N700S trains to validate power delivery, track stability, and emergency braking at full speed. Commercial service begins 12-18 months after successful trials, depending on electrification and signaling progress. Testing is intensive. Trains will log thousands of kilometers before carrying passengers. Engineers will evaluate braking distances, simulate failures, and run the system through monsoons and summer heat. Meanwhile, conductors, engineers, maintenance teams, station staff, and emergency crews train to develop the operational discipline required for a zero margin for error system. India is building more than a rail line. It's building the operational foundation for a national high-speed network. Picture late 2027 or early 2028. Trial runs succeed, and the first commercial trains begin running between Surat and nearby cities. Passengers board, travel at speeds India has never experienced, and step off minutes later, smooth, fast, quiet. What happens next? First, media attention explodes. International outlets cover India's entry into the high-speed rail era. Comparisons to Japan, China, and Europe dominate headlines, and tourism spikes as people flock to try the train. Second, real estate surges. Property values along the corridor jump. Cities like Vadodara and Vapi become viable commuter hubs. New commercial districts emerge around stations. Third, business travel transforms. Companies shift operations to lower-cost cities along the line, while staying connected to headquarters. A software firm could keep leadership in Mumbai, but place development teams in Surat or Vadodara, with employees traveling between cities in hours. Labor markets and urban planning begin to reorganize around the corridor. Fourth, other states demand their own lines. Chennai, Bangalore, Mysore, Mumbai, Pune. Competition intensifies among Japan, China, France, and others for future contracts. Fifth and most important, India's self-image evolves. Completing a world-class mega-project on time and on budget reshapes national confidence. Young engineers see opportunity at home. Students reconsider studying abroad. The long-running brain drain begins to slow. Investors take notice. If India can execute high-speed rail, what else can they deliver? Smart cities, advanced manufacturing, research hubs. All of this becomes possible if the system works. Now let's imagine the other timeline. Mid-2027 arrives. Trial runs start encountering repeated technical problems. Electrification shows instability. Signaling systems experience glitches. Safety certifications slip behind schedule. And in a worst-case scenario, a testing incident injures workers or damages equipment. The target of late 2027 or 2028 commercial operations slips to 2029, then 2030. Each delay breeds another. The media that was ready to celebrate now smells blood. Every delay, every cost overrun, every technical problem that was quietly managed suddenly becomes front-page news. Opposition parties call for investigations. Activists demand accountability. International observers quietly write India off as another developing country with big dreams and poor execution. The $17 billion question becomes a $17 billion scandal. Calls to cancel the project grow louder. The Japanese loan suddenly looks like a trap instead of a gift. Other countries quietly cross India off their list of partners for ambitious infrastructure. Public opinion turns brutal. Social media is filled with comparisons to China's efficiency. Memes about Indian Standard Time applied to bullet trains. The project becomes a national joke instead of a source of pride, and the psychological damage is worse than the financial cost. India tried to join the big leagues and failed. That narrative sticks for a generation. Young talent continues leaving for opportunities abroad. Investors stay cautious. The window for ambitious infrastructure closes. The worst part? It might not even be India's fault. A single catastrophic monsoon season could damage incomplete infrastructure. A global economic crisis could freeze funding. Supply chain disruptions could delay critical components. But perception doesn't care about context. Failure is failure. Here's the part almost no one talks about: climate. India is the world's third largest carbon emitter, and transportation is a major contributor. A flight between Mumbai and Ahmedabad emits about 10 times more carbon per passenger than electric high-speed rail. Highway travel emits around 5 times more. If this bullet train proves comfortable, reliable, and affordable, it could shift millions of trips each year from high-carbon transport to low-carbon rail. Extend that to future corridors Delhi-Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, Kolkata, Patna, and India could cut transportation emissions by double-digit percentages while improving mobility. That's why this project matters far beyond speed. It's one of the most important climate-aligned infrastructure efforts on the planet right now. India faces rising temperatures, water scarcity, and coastal flooding, all while trying to grow its economy. High-speed rail offers a rare win-win: better infrastructure with far lower carbon intensity. And if India shows that a developing nation can build modern, low-carbon systems without slowing economic growth. It could reshape global climate politics entirely because it provides a model other countries can follow. The next 18 to 24 months will determine everything. Right now, somewhere in Gujarat, workers are laying the final sections of track. Engineers are running simulation after simulation on control systems. Crew members are training on Japanese N700S sets before bringing that expertise back to India. Government officials are quietly sweating over timelines and budget reports. The construction status is clear: 94% land acquired, 92% of viaducts complete, 95% of the Thane Creek Tunnel bored. 28 N700S Shinkansen trains have been ordered and are being prepared. Electrification and signaling 60% done and climbing. Trial runs expected mid-2027. Commercial operations targeted for 2028 to 2030. If they hit those marks, this project becomes a template for developing countries around the world trying to leapfrog into modern infrastructure. It proves that democracy, even messy democracy with property rights and court systems and opposition parties, can deliver mega projects on par with authoritarian efficiency. If they don't, it becomes a cautionary tale about ambition exceeding capacity. Either way, the world is watching, because India is doing far more than constructing a train. They're creating proof that the old assumptions about who achieves the impossible and who is left out of that conversation may be shifting. And if a country of 1.4 billion people, with all its complexity and challenges and chaos, can put bullet trains on tracks that work as well as anything in Tokyo or Paris, then maybe the 21st century doesn't belong to whoever builds the most. Maybe it belongs to whoever builds the smartest. The question has moved beyond whether India can build high-speed rail. The physical infrastructure already proves that capability. The deeper challenge lies in operation, maintaining the discipline, precision, and safety culture that separates world-class systems from costly failures. Japan built that culture over 60 years. China compressed it into 15 through sheer scale and state control. India is attempting to do it in a decade while maintaining democratic processes and individual rights. That's the experiment the world is really watching. The clock is ticking. 24 months to validate, or 24 months to a very expensive lesson. Will India's bullet train revolution meet its 2028 targets or face another round of delays? What happens when those first N700S trains hit Indian tracks at 200 miles per hour? And what does this mean for the next decade of mega projects across Asia? Drop your predictions in the comments. If India's high-speed leap impressed you, wait until you see how China is reshaping its borders with one of the most ambitious mountain crossing projects ever attempted. A highway carved through terrain once considered impossible to navigate. Watch next: China's highway into Nepal, a move the US can't ignore.